You are not God. Only He can create a man and woman. If you think you can, you are defying God's plan. The evil Dr. Frankenstein. Care about riches, not your mental health. Deep dive podcast show. Let's dive in. Amen. In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true. Truth bomb, come on. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be diving into something really fascinating. The biological differences between men and women.
Oh, yeah.
They're going way beyond what we can just see. You know, we're talking chromosomes, hormones, brains, the whole shebang.
Absolutely.
We'll be using this document called Understanding Biological Differences Between Men and Women by Samuel Carter as our guide for this deep dive.
Great source.
Yeah, and you know, it's really amazing how much these differences impact our lives in ways we probably don't even realize.
It really is remarkable, you know, how these differences, often starting at the most fundamental level, you know, affect everything from the way we think and behave to our health and well-being. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and it all starts with that one tiny chromosome, right? That's like the first dominant.
You're probably familiar with, you know, XX and XY chromosomes.
Right.
And what's really fascinating is that the Y chromosome in males, it acts like a master switch. It triggers this whole cascade of events that lead to the development of all these distinctly male characteristics.
So it's not just about having a Y chromosome, it's about what that chromosome sets in motion.
Absolutely. The Y chromosome is responsible for the production of testosterone, and that essentially sculpts the developing male body and brain. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Y chromosome also influences how genes are expressed throughout the body. And this expression can actually vary between men and women.
Oh, wow.
And this impacts things like height and even disease susceptibility.
So even if men and women share certain genes, like those genes might be acting differently.
Precisely. It's like having the same ingredients, but a slightly different recipe. You end up with unique outcomes. And this difference in gene expression, it contributes to this really fascinating array of variations between men and women, even at the cellular level.
That's mind-blowing. So we've got these fundamental genetic differences.
Yeah.
Then hormones get thrown into the mix, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just puberty we're talking about.
No, not at all. Hormones, they act like these powerful chemical messengers that influence our development and our function throughout our lives. Both men and women produce hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but the levels differ significantly.
So it's not just about having them, it's about the precise balance.
Exactly. It's like a unique hormonal cocktail that each sex has.
Right.
And testosterone in particular, it plays this really crucial role in shaping the male brain.
Wow.
Even before birth. This early exposure to testosterone has a lasting impact on behavior and cognition, which leads to some of the differences we observe between men and women later in life.
So the stereotypes about men being more spatially oriented or, you know, having a harder time expressing emotions, is there like a biological basis for that?
Well, there's certainly evidence to suggest that hormonal differences contribute to those tendencies, but it's really important to remember that these are just tendencies, not absolutes. Every individual is unique, and we can't just, you know, reduce someone's behavior down to their biology.
Right. It's never just nature or nurture. It's always that interplay. Yeah. Speaking of brains, I've heard that men and women's brains are actually structured differently. Is there any truth to that?
There is. Brain imaging studies have revealed some really fascinating differences in the size and structure of certain brain areas between men and women. For example, the hippocampus, a brain region vital for memory, is proportionally larger in women. This might explain why women often excel at recalling details and remembering conversations.
Yeah.
There's actually a physical difference in their brains that supports that ability.
So that's why I can never remember those important conversations. But wait, if women have a larger hippocampus, does that mean men have the advantage in other areas?
Well, the amygdala, which plays a key role in processing emotions, is generally larger in men.
Okay.
Now, whether that translates to men being more emotional is debatable,
Right.
but this structural difference might contribute to how men and women experience and express emotions differently.
It seems like these structural differences could have a significant impact on, how we perceive the world and interact with each other even.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the size of these brain regions. It's also about how they're connected and how they communicate with each other. Research suggests that the two hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right, communicate differently in men and women. Women tend to have more crosstalk between the hemispheres, while men show stronger connections within each hemisphere.
So does that mean women are better at multitasking, like the stereotype suggests?
That's one theory. This difference in brain connectivity might explain why women generally excel at tasks that require verbal fluency and multitasking, while men often outperform in activities demanding spatial reasoning, like navigating or mentally rotating objects.
Okay, so let me give you a real-world example of this. My wife can navigate anywhere without a map. She remembers landmarks, street names like she has a built-in GPS.
Me, I rely on my phone and get lost easily.
Yeah.
That's a classic illustration. Women often excel at navigating using landmarks and spatial relationships, while men tend to rely more on a dead reckoning approach, focusing on directions and distances. These behavioral differences, they likely stem, at least in part, from the structural and functional variations we've been discussing.
Wow. It's amazing to think that these seemingly small differences in brain structure can lead to such noticeable differences in our everyday lives.
It really highlights the intricate connection between our biology and our behavior.
Yeah.
And it underscores how much we're still learning about the amazing complexity of the human brain.
This is all so fascinating, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about health. Do these biological differences affect our susceptibility to certain diseases? I mean, is it just lifestyle choices, or does biology play a role too?
Biology plays a significant role. These differences influence who gets sick, how diseases present, and even how we respond to treatment.
That's incredible. So it's not a level playing field when it comes to health.
Unfortunately, no. For instance, women are generally more prone to autoimmune disorders, which is when the body's immune system mistakenly attacks its own tissues.
Right.
Men, on the other hand, are more susceptible to cardiovascular disease.
So it's like a trade-off.
Yeah.
Well, why is there such a difference?
It's a complex interplay of factors. Hormones, especially testosterone, seem to offer some protection against autoimmune diseases, but can increase the risk of heart problems. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It really is. So what does this all mean for healthcare? Should we be taking a different approach for men and women?
Absolutely. We need to move beyond this one-size-fits-all model and consider the unique biological factors at play in each sex. This means tailoring treatments, developing gender-specific medications, and even adjusting screening guidelines to account for these differences.
This is really eye-opening. Now, before we move on, there's one more important topic we need to address, transgender individuals.
Yes, and this is where understanding the difference between biological sex and gender identity becomes really crucial.
Okay, so help me understand that distinction.
Biological sex refers to the physical characteristics that we've been talking about.
Correct.
Chromosomes, hormones, anatomy.
Right.
Gender identity, on the other hand, is about how someone feels and identifies internally.
Okay.
Transgender individuals identify as a gender that differs from the sex they were assigned at birth.
So, for example, someone might be biologically male, but identify as female, or vice versa.
Exactly. And while hormonal or surgical interventions can help align a person's body with their gender identity,
Right.
it's important to remember that their underlying biological sex, at least in terms of chromosomes, remains unchanged.
That's a critical point.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to healthcare. We can't just assume that someone's gender identity tells us everything we need to know about their health risks.
Precisely, when providing care for transgender individuals, it's essential to consider both their gender identity and their biological sex. For example, screenings and treatments should be based on their existing body parts and biological risk factors, not solely on their gender identity. It's about providing comprehensive and informed care that takes into account the whole person.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much ground, but it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, but this foundation will help us delve even deeper into this fascinating world of biological differences between men and women in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait. We'll be back soon to explore even more about this incredible topic. Until then, keep those brains buzzing.
Definitely.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the biological differences between men and women. Last time we were exploring the fascinating world of chromosomes and hormones and brain structures.
Right.
But now I want to look at this from a different angle. Like, what about evolution? How did these differences come to be in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Evolutionary psychology offers some really compelling insights into, how these differences may have evolved over millions of years.
So we're talking survival of the fittest, the whole Darwinian thing.
Think back to our ancient ancestors living as hunter-gatherers. Men were often the hunters venturing out into dangerous territory. They needed strength, spatial awareness, a certain level of risk-taking to be successful.
And women, they were responsible for gathering food, raising children, maintaining those social connections within the group.
Right, and these different roles place different demands on their bodies and minds, leading to the gradual development of these distinct physical and cognitive traits that were advantageous for survival and reproduction.
So men evolved to be better at hunting, and women evolved to excel at nurturing and social interaction. I mean, it makes sense when you put it that way.
Exactly. It's fascinating to consider how these ancient roles may have shaped the biological differences that we see today. For example, men generally have greater upper body strength and better spatial reasoning, which would have been crucial for hunting. Women, on the other hand, tend to have superior verbal skills and a greater capacity for empathy qualities that would have been essential for child rearing and maintaining social harmony.
It's incredible to think that our biology is still influenced by the lives of our ancient ancestors. But of course, we can't just box people in based on these evolutionary patterns, right?
Absolutely. Human behavior is incredibly diverse, and there's such a vast spectrum of variation within each sex. It's important to remember that these are general tendencies, not hard and fast rules.
Right.
Not every man is a master hunter, and not every woman is a super nurturer. We each possess a unique blend of traits and abilities.
So while biology might provide a foundation, it doesn't dictate our destiny.
Right.
We have the power to choose our own paths and develop our own unique strengths.
Exactly. Our environment, experiences, personal choices, they all interact with our biology to shape who we are. It's this beautiful interplay between nature and nurture that makes us so fascinating and diverse as a species.
I love that perspective. Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of where these biological differences come from, what do they mean for us today? How can we use this knowledge to create a more equitable and just society?
That's the key question, isn't it? Understanding these differences can be so powerful if we approach them with a commitment to equity.
Okay.
It means recognizing that men and women might have different needs and different strengths, and designing systems that support both sexes fairly.
So it's not about treating everyone exactly the same, but it's about creating a level playing field.
Precisely.
Where everyone has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their biological sex.
Exactly. For example, in healthcare, we need to move beyond this one-size-fits-all approach and consider those sex-specific risk factors, symptoms, and treatment responses.
And what about education? Could this knowledge help us tailor our teaching methods to better suit the learning styles of both boys and girls?
Absolutely. By understanding the cognitive strengths and tendencies of each sex, we can create learning environments that cater to these diverse learning styles and really foster a love of learning in all students.
This all makes so much sense. But here's something I've been wondering about. How do we use this knowledge to combat those harmful stereotypes? I mean, these biological differences are often twisted to justify discrimination and limit opportunities for people.
You're absolutely right. That's why promoting scientific literacy is so crucial. By understanding the nuances of these biological differences, we can debunk harmful myths and challenge these outdated gender roles.
So instead of saying men are better at math, we can explain that on average, there might be some slight differences in spatial abilities, but that doesn't mean all men are math geniuses or that women can't excel in STEM fields.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the complexity of the issue and avoiding those oversimplifications.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond that black and white thinking and embrace this beautiful spectrum of human diversity.
This knowledge can also help us cultivate, greater empathy and understanding between the sexes, right?
Absolutely. Recognizing that men and women might experience the world differently, even at a biological level, can foster compassion and reduce judgment.
It's about breaking down those rigid gender boxes and recognizing that there are many ways to be a man or a woman.
Precisely, embracing diversity, both biological and social, is what makes our world so rich and vibrant.
This has been an incredibly enlightening conversation. We've covered so much ground. but I feel like there's still so much more to explore.
You're right. The research in this field is constantly evolving, and new discoveries are being made all the time.
Which makes this such an exciting area of study. But for now, we need to take a quick break.
Yes, let's pause here and recharge our brains.
When we come back, we'll delve into some of the cutting-edge research that's pushing the boundaries of our understanding, including the fascinating world of epigenetics and neuroplasticity.
Stay tuned. We're about to take this deep dive to a whole new level.
Welcome back. We've been on quite a journey exploring these biological differences between men and women.
We have.
We've talked about genes, hormones,
Yeah.
brain structures, even evolution.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
But like we hinted at before, there's even more to uncover, right?
It is. The world of science is always evolving, and research in this area is constantly challenging our assumptions and, expanding our understanding.
And I have to admit, some of this stuff is pretty mind-blowing, like the whole concept of epigenetics.
Yeah.
The idea that our experiences can actually change how our genes work. It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does sound a bit like science fiction, doesn't it?
Right.
But it's very real.
Yeah.
Epigenetics is revealing how our environment and experiences can actually modify gene expression, essentially turning the volume up or down on certain genes.
So it's not just about the genes we inherit, it's about how those genes are influenced by the world around us.
Exactly. Things like diet, stress exposure to toxins, even trauma can leave these what we call epigenetic marks on our genes, affecting our health, our behavior, even the traits we pass on to future generations. Is like having this extra layer of control on top of our genetic code.
So even though men and women might start with different genetic blueprints, like their lived experiences can further shape those differences.
Absolutely. This adds another layer of complexity to the whole picture, highlighting that interplay between nature and nurture.
Right.
It's not a case of either. It's both working together to shape who we are.
It makes you realize that our biology isn't like fixed.
Yeah.
We have more power to influence our health and well-being than we might think.
Exactly. And this understanding has incredible potential for, personalized medicine.
Yeah.
By analyzing an individual's genetic and epigenetic profile, we can tailor treatments and lifestyle recommendations for, optimal health.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we could have healthcare that's truly customized to each person's unique needs and biological makeup. That's amazing.
It is a very exciting frontier in medicine.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about neuroplasticity. You mentioned this term earlier, and I think it's a really crucial concept to understand.
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what it means. It sounds like something to do with plastic brains.
Well, you're not far off. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's remarkable ability to change and adapt throughout life. It means our brains aren't fixed or static. They can actually rewire themselves based on our experiences.
So it's like our brains are constantly learning and evolving.
Exactly. Every time we learn a new skill, form a new habit, even experience a challenging event, our brains create these new connections and pathways.
Wow.
And this adaptability allows us to grow, learn, and recover from setbacks.
So even though there might be some initial differences in brain structure between men and women, those differences aren't set in stone.
That's right. Experiences can shape and reshape our brains, leading to further divergence or even convergence between the sexes.
So a woman who spends years training in a spatially demanding field like engineering or architecture might actually develop brain structures that are more similar to a man's.
That's definitely possible. And neuroplasticity challenges this whole notion of, fixed hardwired differences between the sexes.
Right.
It highlights this incredible flexibility and resilience of the human brain.
It's empowering to know that we're not just products of our genes or our biology. We have this power to mold our brains and shape our lives through our experiences and choices.
Absolutely. This understanding has such profound implications for education, therapy, even social change. It underscores the importance of providing these diverse and challenging experiences to everyone, regardless of sex, to help unlock their full potential.
It's about creating environments where everyone feels empowered to explore their interests, develop their talents, and challenge their limits.
Exactly. And by embracing these principles of neuroplasticity, we can help people overcome challenges, break down stereotypes, and truly reach their full potential.
This entire conversation has been a real eye-opener. We've explored this fascinating and complex world of biological differences between men and women. From the microscopic level of genes and hormones to this remarkable adaptability of the human brain.
It really has been a journey of discovery, and I hope it sparked a sense of wonder and curiosity in our listeners.
I think it's important to remember that while these differences are real and can be significant, they don't define us.
Right.
There's so much more than our biology.
Absolutely. We are individuals with unique experiences, perspectives, aspirations, and by understanding and appreciating these biological differences between men and women, we can build a more inclusive and equitable world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned something new and that this conversation will inspire you to keep exploring this fascinating world of human biology. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.
You are not God, only He can create a man and woman. If you think you can, you are defying God's plan. The evil Dr. Frankenstein care about riches, not your mental health. Deep Dive podcast show, let's dive in. Quam dementia tua est, spiritus qui venita Deo super, orabo prote Deus te amant. A montibus ad campos, ab urbibus ad mare, stamus pro libertate, pro fide et familia. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. Mergibus profunde in cordis nostri credimus, valores conservativi, in animis nostris intertestis sunt cum fortitudini et honore. Tendebimus locum nostrum pro libertate, pro traditione, in hastera quam invenimus. Dr. Frankenstein malus cura, divitiarum non sanitatis mentis tue, spectaculum podcast deep dive mergamus, quam dementia tua est, spiritus qui venita Deo super, orabo prote Deus te amant. A montibus et campos, ab urbibus ad mare, stamus pro libertate, pro fides bania. In every town and village, in every heart and home, we'll uphold our principles, together we'll roam. Through trials and through triumphs,